everyone, welcome back to part 3 of the tutorial series for beginners. In this section, I will introduce you to painting techniques. A technique is the process you use to achieve a specific effect. Throughout this series, you will hear me use terms like scumbling, underpainting, dabbing, dragging and so on. These are all techniques used to create atmosphere, depth, texture and blending. This lesson explores the various concepts and techniques you will need to apply to complete the painting. First, I'd like to talk about the scumbling technique. Scumbling is an excellent method for creating the effect of mist or haze to suggest distance in a landscape. Using a dry brush, gently apply semi-opaque color over dry paint, letting the underlying colors remain visible. As you can see on the screen, I'm using a dry filbert brush to apply the scumbling technique to the canvas surface. This creates a layer of soft mist for the distant mountain, making it appear farther away compared to the scenes in the foreground. For the next example with this tree trunk, I'll use the scumbling technique to paint a layer of highlights on the trunk. Remember to let the underlying colors remain visible as you do this. Another example is this old moss-covered brick wall. I'm using the scumbling technique to create an effect on it by applying a mix of white and yellow ochre. I apply a new layer for this old wall while still preserving the underlying colors of the wall. You gently touch the brush head to the canvas surface and pull it in various directions to create texture for the wall. Continuing, I'd like to introduce you to the scrubbing technique. It's utilized for underpainting and highlighting objects such as rocks, trees, and dirt. This technique typically involves using a bristle brush with heavier pressure to establish a rough, basic form and create highlights. It's important to note that this technique is not suitable for detailed or finishing work. Its purpose is solely for building the fundamental forms. For realistic rocks or mountains, use a palette knife to lightly smear layers of color over another color or directly onto the support. Your strokes should blend the colors slightly, but overworking the area will ruin the texture. The smear technique is most effective when applied to a wet base coat. This is because the colors will blend together as you move your palette knife. This technique is especially suitable for creating smooth and blended effects. Similarly, I'm applying this technique to the land bank as you see on the screen. Next is the scratch technique. This technique is used to effectively depict rough textures like bark. To achieve this, use a palette knife with quick, vertical strokes to scratch off color. Utilize the side of the knife to create grooves and indentations of different shapes, revealing the underlying color. As you can see, first I'm using a mix of white and yellow ochre for the initial layer. Next, I'm creating a highlight layer with a mix of more white and a bit of yellow ochre. Now, I'm mixing white with ultramarine to create reflected light on this tree trunk. Additionally, I will guide you on applying the scratch technique to this mountain. This method is widely used when painting mountains, and I'm no exception. First, I use a mix of white, ultramarine, and a touch of rosé. Vary the direction of your strokes to create natural-looking layers of light. At the peak of the mountain, I use the color orange and create highlights using a mix of white, orange, and medium yellow. You can see that this technique isn't too difficult either. You can easily follow along to create a beautiful mountain using the scratch technique. Next is the dabbing technique. This is a very popular technique that many people enjoy using. It can be used to create leaves, ground cover, flowers, and texture. To do this, dab the tip of a bristle brush on a table or palette until it fans out. Then load the paint and begin dabbing the brush tip on the canvas to create the desired effect. I create highlights for this layer of leaves by using lemon yellow with the dabbing technique. Similarly, using the dabbing technique and a filbert brush, I create a simple pine tree with ease. Dragging is perfect for rendering sunlight glistening on the water. Pull the brush lightly across the canvas to leave patterns of broken color over another color. Use a hit and miss technique so that the highlights appear to dance across the water. In addition, I often use a small palette knife for applying this technique. The water surface effect it produces is beautiful and straight. Pay attention to creating gentle waves with short strokes. The final technique I want to mention is the spatter technique. Spattered paint creates small dots that can give a realistic appearance to stars, rocks and sand. To spatter, load a brush with paint and tap your finger against the handle to release the color. You can also use an old toothbrush to achieve the same effect. Please note that to make applying the spatter technique easier, you should mix your paint with water to thin it out before using. So, I've provided you with some techniques that I often use for acrylic painting. These techniques are essential for upcoming lessons. If you enjoy the videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. You can also support me on Patreon to help create even better content.